Hello everyone. This Friday on July the 5th, we're probably going to be waking up in the UK to a Labour government with Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. And I don't think enough thought has been given about what happens from that date onwards in this country. For the last few weeks of this general election campaign, indeed for the last few months, and I would argue for about 3 years now, there's been a growing resentment and vitriol aimed at the Conservative Party and its time in government, where the common refrain is, what have you done in the last 14 years? Absolutely useless. Whilst we can have a discussion about what was achieved by the Conservative government, and I think it would be extremely uncharitable to say that nothing was achieved in that time. However, the last 3 years, since the toppling of Boris Johnson, the public mood has turned definitely against the Conservatives as they lurch from one disaster to another. The COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, the measures the government instituted in that time, showed a Conservative Party that was weak and supine in defence of the rights and freedoms of British citizens, and we could all see that it was actually the civil service and quangos, often controlled and dominated by people who were out and out left-wingers, socialists. Even in the case of Independent Sage, there was a member of the Communist Party involved in it. So it looked, in the last few years since the pandemic, that the Conservative Party is weak, supine, giving into Blairism, towing the progressive line, and riven with globalists who care very little for this country. And I think all those claims have a strong basis in reality. However, the constant kicking of the Conservative Party in these months were justified in many cases, has led to people just fixating. They're pouring out a visceral anger at the party, and we say, kick them again, 0 seats. That's the refrain you've heard, and I know where that term originated from. I know who first coined it, and I wouldn't trust them a 1 inch. If you're saying 0 seats, you've been duped. And I don't say this as I'm not putting out a let's vote Conservative message. My video from the other day still stands. My opinion still stands. Vote for the quality of the candidate standing in your area. Forget about party loyalties on this one. It's important that we have the best quality members of Parliament, no matter what party they come from, in there. We do not want PPE dullards. We don't want yes men. We don't want people who absolutely hate this country sitting in the House of Commons. So my message to everyone is look at the candidates standing in your election. You can look up their details. Most of them put out a statement of who they are, what they've done. You can ask around. You can find this information out and find the person that resonates best with you. If you have time to get to hustings, if you have time to actually talk to any of them, just talk to them, find out what kind of person they are. Use your judgment, assess them as a person, not as a facade for a political party, because I think political parties ultimately let you down. So that's my message. Vote for the best quality person in your area. But moving along from that, let's talk about what happens under this Labour government, because I think the online right just don't talk about it. All they can fixate on is punishing the Conservatives. Well, if you get 0 seats, that's them well and truly punished. Well done, you. If they have just a handful, the predictions are 60, 70 seats. Okay, that's still a massive drubbing. There's even a scenario where they get about 40, 50 seats. The Lib Dems become the opposition. Reform might get 18 seats at most. So let's look at what this will look like, and let's start thinking. This is what I've been saying the last 3 years. Get real, think things through. And I think the online right struggles with those two very simple terms. Get real, confronting reality as it is, not this fantasy world that you've got cooked up in your head. Okay, and also think things through. When you take actions, when you make big statements on the internet, think about the consequences of what you're saying. Think about the consequences of what you advocate for. Because it's easy. Any damn fool can get on social media and just blah, 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 blather on, make a big statement, so based, so repealed, okay? And it just won't work in practice. It's, there's the idiocy of visceral politics online. And you see the left do it all the time, and I'm increasingly seeing the online right do it. There's very little thought into what they say. So, we're going to have a Labour government, highly likely. And if you watch David Starkey's latest videos on about who Keir Starmer is, the rise of Starmer, his background, his role in the DPP, but also he's going to have, as two of his closest advisors, he's appointed them, Sue Gray, who brought Boris Johnson's premiership down, okay, appointed as this, morality, ethics czar in the government, and she brought Boris Johnson down over some cake and a party and all these things, and ignored what Keir Starmer was doing in his own party during lockdown. She allegedly was an informer during the Troubles, and she's had very strong links with the Labour Party. Then all of a sudden, she's in the Conservative, she's appointed by the Conservatives to a role in government, and now has gone back to Labour. Ollie Robinson is the other one. Name might ring a bell. He was an advisor to Theresa May. But for the vast majority of his career, he was working for Labour. He was in these NGOs for Labour in intelligence, sort of government intelligence. Not spying at the rest of the world, but in this country. And then, lo and behold, he has a few years where he's working in Theresa May's government. Then he has a little bit of time in the private sector, which apparently he didn't like. And now he's back in with Labour, going to have a role in the Labour government. So this kind of reminds me of the days of Tony Blair with Alistair Campbell as his right-hand man, and Peter Mandelson as his other main, confidant, sort of his Keitel and Jodl in a mid-century German government. Excuse me. So, what are we going to do? If you are on the right, if you're a conservative like myself, for years I was saying I'm somewhere on the right. Well, I finally found out where my political home is, and that is as a national conservative. Okay. And what's going to happen to those, if you're a national conservative like me, you may be a populist conservative, Liz Trusting, the popular conservatism. You may be a libertarian. You may be just like I was, somewhere on the right. You just haven't settled. Even if you're on the centre right, this will affect you, this incoming Labour government. We know what the blueprint is. The blueprint is to try and bypass Parliament as much as possible. That was a Blairite thing. That was a Gordon Brown thing. It's something Keir Starmer also believes in. He believes in the power of the law and the law courts, circumventing parliamentary democracy. We know this is going to happen. We know that there's going to be increased hate speech laws. We know there's going to be this definition of Islamophobia is going to become law. Have we even thought about the implications of this? See, so many of the online right, they pride themselves on being shit posters. They pride themselves on being edgelords. Okay, snarky comment here, pithy put down there, calling bullshit on the woke agenda. Yeah, it's all very good. Okay, but as I've found out recently, that's all they're capable of. We need to build a right-wing movement, because if there's 0 seats for the Conservative Party and there's 18 seats for Reform, how are we going to build an opposition based around that. Now, here are the problems as I see it. I'll get to the Conservative Party last. I'm going to tackle the other problems that I see. First of all, you edgelords, you snarkers on social media. Yeah, I love your humour. Okay, but the hammer's going to fall on you. It's going to fall on you, and you start losing your social media accounts, and you'll feel even more pressured to hide behind those pseudonyms. But that's going to come down the line. A law that bans pseudonyms on social media. That's going to come down the line. What are you going to do then? Where's your sarcasm and your snarky humour and your edgelord stuff and your memes? Where's that going to get you? Okay? You cannot bring down this Labour government with a few memes. Okay? Ain't going to happen. You may have a little victory. You might, like, your morale officers at best with the memes. Okay? It's not going to change anything, but it might give your followers a kind of bit of cheer, a little bit of hope. Okay? Keep going with that as long as possible, but I'm promising you the ban hammer's going to come down the line on you. Okay, reform. Maybe reform is the replacement for the Conservatives. Well, as well as watching David Starkey's channel, another person I think you should be checking out and reading is Pete North, at Northern Variant, as he is on Twitter. He doesn't do many videos, but he has a Substack. I recommend you read him. Now, he's pointed out a lot of flaws with reform, and I agree with him. Absolutely. There is no core ethos to reform. Are they conservative? Are they alternative conservative? Are they on the right? How do you know? Because I think people project what they want onto reform. So they say it's an alternative right-wing party, replacement for the Conservatives. That's projection. What do reform say themselves? Ben Habib, who is a prominent member of Reform Party, a very intelligent man, often has very insightful things to say. In a talk he gave at a New Culture Forum meeting, he said he doesn't see himself as right-wing. Right-wing, left-wing, it doesn't matter to him. He is only concerned with what normal middle-class people are concerned about. But normal middle-class people, they can blow left, they can blow right. So Habib himself, and he's the best they've got. He's the brightest and the best Reform have got. And he has no core ethos. The party has no core ethos. At least with the Conservative Party, even though they've lost their way, they've drifted, they've fallen from their principles. But at least you can go back to Burke, at least you can go back to Disraeli, and everything else pre-2005. You've got a history of conservatives and also conservative thought thinkers and writers. We can tap into Roger Scruton, Thomas Sowell, Michael Oakeshott. We have the resources, we have the ideology, the core ethos of conservatives, and conservatives a lot older than you think. It can be traced back to Tudor times and times of the Reformation, with that cautious, we're not radicals, we don't want to overthrow the system, we need to improve things, and if we're going to be Protestants, okay, but let's be practical, pragmatic, not revolutionary, not radical. This is a very old political tradition. And Reform, they're anti-establishment. They just want to kick the establishment. Okay, and that at the moment, that's the Conservative Party. They've devoted about 70% of their efforts into kicking the Conservative Party. Considerably less time kicking Labour, I've noticed. But they're just there to kick the establishment. And in many ways, the establishment does need a good kicking. But then what? Once you've destroyed... Let's say Conservative get 0 seats. Reform get about 18 or 20 seats. Okay, what next? What's your ethos? How are you going to combat the Labour Party? How are you going to combat the Lib Dems? Is there a plan? Is there an ethos? Or are you just going to react to every single issue? That's what Reform seems to me to be. And I have some respect for Reform, and I think they're very good at highlighting problems. They're excellent at that. But what's the core ethos? What's the wellspring? Where did they return to? What's their first principles that they can return to formulate policy? Or are they just going to react to this policy, react to that policy, react to that policy? And they're just going to be a knee-jerk response party, led by a man who doesn't necessarily do delegation or cabinets. Think about it. Who was the defence spokesman for UKIP when Nigel Farage was leading them? Who was the defence spokesman? I can't name them. But anyway, that's something to consider. Reform might be good short term, giving the establishment a kicking, but long term, we've got 5 years. Are reform going to be around in 5 years' time? Now, Pete North says that he's found a solution with the Social Democratic Party. He's going to be joining them and working with them. And again, Social Democratic Party, the SDP, I've looked at their manifesto. I follow William Coulsdon on social media. I've seen a few things of theirs, and I respect them. I really do respect them. I think they are, in many ways, they are the template of what a political party in the United Kingdom should be. But they're not a conservative party. They are still of the left. To me, they're the acceptable face of the left. They're the left in this country as they should be. A social democratic movement that believes in a little bit more government intervention than most. Their economic policies skewer to the left, but they are patriots. They believe in the nation state. They are socially conservative. They believe in the nuclear family and rights of individuals to an extent, perhaps not to the same extent as, say, a national conservative would be, but still, there's a lot there. And if the SDP was standing in my constituency, which they're not, and the main parties were Labour and the Liberal Democrats, and let's say the Conservatives are just wiped out in this scenario, I would vote for SDP. I would support SDP, but I can't. I just can't as a Conservative. I've been told, join the SDP. But if I did, it'd be under false pretenses, because I am not a social democrat. I'm a conservative. I'm a national conservative. And I'd be under false pretenses. But where the SDP can challenge Labour and the Lib Dems, I will back them. I will support them as the alternative voice of the left. But they are not the voice of the right. They may be sympathetic to the right. They may be sympathetic to conservatives, but they're not us. And they're under no obligation to help the right. So what happens? What do we do post July the 5th? Because it's going to happen. The bans are going to happen. There's going to be more legislation curbing freedoms. You're going to wake up one morning and find that they've put a barrier at the end of your street, which will only be open at certain times. That's when you're allowed to travel. It's coming. The bans on air travel, the restrictions. There's the legislators of so many cities around the world have signed up to a document that says you can only have 3 replacement items of clothing a year. I mean, it's coming. The net zero madness is coming. The trans madness is coming. And it's going to be entrenched and enshrined in law. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you're on the right? What are you going to do if your politics are naturally conservative or to the right or libertarian? What? Have you even thought about what's going to happen next? Have you thought about how you're going to live under these circumstances? Which is why I've been saying for 3 years, we need a Labour survival plan. And every time I go to the online right, I went to the Wellington Project with this. In my last days with Unpopular Opinions, I went to them with this. What's the Labour survival plan? And they didn't care. And they don't want to talk about it. There are times when I think, you want a Labour government. You actually want this. But you've got to come up with a Labour survival plan. Now, I know some on the online right, they want to just hide away. They're in their little house, their little homestead, and they're going to homeschool their children, And they're going to stick their head in the sand and say, all that, I just want the government to leave me alone. You think a Starmer-led Labour government's going to leave you alone? You want to homeschool your kids? Well, yeah, in principle, I'm there. I support you. I support your right to do that. Labour won't. They'll force your child into a state school. I've got two sons. One's at a private school. He's still got 2 years to go there. The other one's at a state school. Now, that was largely their choice. They have academic subjects that they're particularly interested in, and each school was lent more towards one than the other, and they chose the schools that suited them, their academic needs, and their social needs as well. But my oldest son's going to get hit by that 20% VAT increase. We're going to try in this house, do our best, get him through those last 2 years, get him through A levels, and then, but it's going to be tough. And if you're in a situation like us, Labour don't care. The thing is that most people who send their children to a private school can just about do it. They've scrimped, they've scraped, they've made sacrifices, they've made cutbacks. They've managed to do it because their child is so important to them, and the child's education is so important to them. That's my experience. This is my family's experience, and I know this is shared by so many of you out there. That's your experience as well. I was just going to force your kids into a state school to be indoctrinated, to hate their country. This is it's coming down the line. All this. What are we going to do to resist? Your place names are going to get changed. The statues are going to get pulled down. Your history is going to be rewritten. All the museums and galleries you like will be shut down and replaced with something woke and horrible. That's why I say we need a Labour survival plan. So, I'm going to throw out some things that you can do. One, if you don't want to join a political party, get active yourself. Okay? Look around you. In your neighbourhood, in the next 5 years, some things that the government are going to try and do that you object to is going to happen. Find like-minded people. You got the internet. Come on, some of you edgelords, you've got thousands of followers on social media. Start applying it to your own local real-life area. Make those contacts. You can make contacts online. You can make contacts in the real world. You can combine the two. You can find people in your local area who feel the same way you do, who are fed up. Get together. Work on something. Stop that road name being changed. Stop that statue from being pulled down. Stop your green spaces that you value from being built on and have migrants shipped in. They're doing that down the road from where I live. Citizens are getting out there and protesting against illegal immigrants just being dumped in their neighbourhood. Okay, if you care about it, fight for it and find other people who fight for it. I tell you what, my local Lib Dems, they're like a swarm out in the streets. They got organised. Labour members get organised. Learn from them. Get organised. Second of all, you want to join a political party. Okay, you want to get involved. That's another way of doing it. Let's look at the three options you've got. One, you follow Pete North's advice and you join the SDP. Fair enough. If you're a centrist, I would say that's the way to go. If you're a little bit centre-left, a little bit centre-right, yeah, go with the SDP. Because if you think that patriotism is really important and the just core values of nuclear family, individual rights and liberty, but you're not an out-and-out conservative, I would say get involved with the SDP, particularly if it's not a naturally conservative area, it's a Labour stronghold or a Lib Dem stronghold. The SDP would be a very good alternative. And get involved there. Work as a team. Topple the radicals, topple the progressives from within. Okay, but let's say you're a right-winger, a national conservative like me. You've got two options. One, join Reform. The cons of joining Reform. They're all over the place. There's no central ethos. It's a party with no discipline. It's visceral. It's knee-jerk. It reacts rather than it is proactive. So, why not join Reform and start and try and give them an ethos? Try and work with them. To stop them from just making knee-jerk, visceral statements about how awful things are, and get them to start thinking, well, where's your first principles? What are the reform's first principles? So get in there and force their leadership. Before Farage decides it's not worth it anymore and he goes off to do a bit more media here in the US. But, get reform to stand on its own two legs ideologically, which it hasn't been able to do. The third option is get involved. It's battered, it's bloody, it's bruised, it's on its knees, it's on a life support machine. Rejoin the Conservatives. But get involved in your local association, right? Forget about the top. Forget about that. Your local association is where it's going to happen. And at least it's a party that you can make an appeal to its first principles. It may have strayed a long way, but I'm telling you, there's so many people still in the Conservative Party who believe in those first principles. They're still there. Maybe dormant, maybe hushed. It may have central office stomping on those first principles to try and prevent them from getting out and taking over once again. But it's there. It's there. But with all these things, no matter which way you go, if you want to go solo, you want to go SDP, you want to go Reform, you want to go Conservative, it's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of effort. But do you care about this country? Do you care about the freedoms and the life that you have? Do you care about your children, what environment they're going to grow up in? Do you want them to be wise, free-thinking people who can make their own mistakes? They don't need the oppressive hand of the state on their lives. Do you care about any of that? Or are you there? Just playing your video game. Just want a game. That's all I wanted to do. Just wanted a game. Just want my memes. If you care, you'll fight for it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say exactly what I'm going to do. I'll share that information when I do it. But I've been involved in this election campaign more than I have at any other time in my life. I've made my decision of who I'm going to vote for, and it's who I think is the best person standing in this area. The person who I think is the best qualified. That's who I'm voting for. I won't say what party they are. Afterwards, we're highly likely to have a Liberal Democrat as my local MP. I happen to know him personally, but I'm going to grill him. Okay, he works for me now. Okay, whether I vote for him or not, he works for me. And if I see him sort of advocating votes for 16-year-olds, which he believes in, or he starts getting tongue-tied on trying to define what a woman is, which he has got himself into that trouble, I'm going to pester him on it. I'm going to let him know, no, you haven't been given a free ride by a bunch of Tories who got so fed up they stayed at home, or they split between voting Conservative, voting Reform. No. We're your constituents. You work for us. And if we don't like the direction you're going in, we'll get organised and make you a one-term MP. Okay, I'm serious here. Everything requires hard work. And I've been very disillusioned with the online right because I see the online right as lazy. They're fundamentally lazy people who sit around on the internet just snarking, being so based. Okay? Any damn fool can be based. Right? I judge people by actions. And that's my call to you. I don't want to badger you, I don't want to browbeat you, but I'm just saying, if you care about this country, if you care about the society, if you care about your family, you're going to have to fight for it. Not with violence, not with criminal activity, although many of the things that we do now normally might become criminalised. We have to be prepared for that. We need to fight back on that. And I'll leave you with this true story. What happened during the last Blairite government. And it shows you can score wins. There was a time, there was all that panic about gun crime, following Dunblane, gun crime. They're building these replica guns. I remember Richard Littlejohn on his show on ITV just he said he was holding a real gun in one hand and a replica in the other. Where did he get the real gun from? It was because it was illegal at that time to have that. And there was a person from the shooting association, some private club, and he couldn't tell this video. Well, if you'd chosen this, you'd be dead. Okay, knowing the way the media works, whichever pistol that man chose, Little John would have said, you would be dead, this is the real one. And I believe both guns were fake, because they wouldn't be able to get a real firearm on a late night chat show. But in that firearm panic, the next thing, Hazel Blears was the Home Office Minister at the time, and she drew up plans to have airsoft weapons banned. Okay, if you've ever done airsofting, it's kind of like it's a fully automatic version of paintballing, essentially, and it's enjoyed by thousands of people, and it's a bit of fun. But she was going to ban airsoft weapons, and what happened was that the airsoft community, the hobbyists, they came up with a plan to push back, and that was it. Hazel Blears was involved in something else. She couldn't deal with the dot the I's, cross the T's on this legislation, so she passed it over to another Labour MP to finish the job of drawing up the legislation that would ban airsoft weapons. And what the airsoft community did was they invited this Labour MP on an airsofting weekend, and he had a great time. And he said, nah, we don't need to ban these weapons. The airsofters are not a threat to the country. They're not criminals. You see, you get organised. You do something. If you care about something, you fight for it. Now, it's another thing I think we can do, and that is try and find your allies in the next parliament. Which MPs are going to be sympathetic to your view? And that's going to be very difficult. I did this. I thought about, okay, let's make a list of Labour MPs that are not too woke, who believe in individual liberties and rights. I was looking for the next Frank Field or Kate Hoey, or even, old school Labour MPs like Robin Cook or Mo Mowlam, the sensible ones, the ones that didn't overplay their hand in left-wing socialism. And depressingly, I can't find any. There are going to be no normal, sensible Labour MPs that are just in touch with ordinary people, normies. There's just not going to be. They're just going to be all woke socialist arseholes. And the Lib Dems are going to be the same. So where's your representative going to come from? Who's going to speak for you? Our work's cut out for us. We've got 5 years to do this. I've been saying for 3 years we should have been planning for a Starmer government eventuality, and we didn't. Nobody on the online right cared. Well, you're going to have to start caring. Or you're going to get shafted. Don't say I didn't warn you.